Hi, this is Calandra, and welcome to week 2 of Calandra and Nino's College Algebra Cohort. We're going to start off our lesson today by talking about graphing equations by plotting points. We graph equations in what's called the Cartesian plane, also known as the rectangular coordinate system. The Cartesian plane has 4 quadrants. Label the 4 quadrants on the axes provided. Okay, so starting in the top right corner, that's going to be the first quadrant, and then we move counterclockwise. So our second quadrant is here. The third quadrant is at the bottom left, and the fourth quadrant is at the bottom right. The horizontal axis is the x-axis, and the vertical axis is the y-axis. So to label our axes, the horizontal one is our x-axis, the vertical one is the y, and one way to remember that, if you think about the tail of the y going down like the axis, that can help you remember which is which. Points in the plane are written as ordered pairs. And the format of an ordered pair, you're going to have a first number, comma, a second number. Your x value is always the first number, and y is always the second number. Unless otherwise indicated, there's some applications where you may change that around, but we won't be doing that in our class. You can always count on x as the first coordinate, y is the second coordinate. So keeping all that information in mind, graph the following points on the above coordinate system. So starting with the point 3, -1, 3 is my x, -1 is my y. So we're going to go 3 units to the right, since 3 is positive in the x direction. Then our y value is negative, so that means we need to go down the negative direction for y. So the point 3, -1 is going to be there. Okay, the next point that we have is -4, 0. So remember, -4 is the x, 0 is the y. Since x is negative, that means we're going to go to the left 4 spaces. Since y is 0, that means we don't go up or down at all. It's going to stay on the x-axis. Our last point is 1/2, 3. So don't let the fraction throw you. You're still going to approach it the same way. We still have 1/2 is our x, 3 is our y. Since x is positive, that means we're going to go half a unit to the right. So between 0 and 1 is going to be my 1/2, so I'm going to draw a tick mark there. And then we're going to go up 3 units. Okay, so that would be the location of that third point. Certain types of equations will have graphs that look a certain way. You will be learning about the graphs of various equation types throughout this course. However, you can always get an idea of what a graph looks like by plotting points. So for this example, I want you to graph the following equation by plotting points. So we have y is equal to x squared minus 1. So plotting points means that you're going to make a table of values. This is also called a T-chart sometimes. So we're going to have an x and a y column. And we want to get a bunch of values so that we can plot them and get an idea of what our graph is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my axes. Make sure that your tick marks are evenly spaced. So I'm going to go using increments of 1, but you can do 5, 10, 15, 20, depending on what your numbers are. If they're really big, you can do 10, 20, 30, just as long as you're consistent on each axis. Okay, and I'm just going to label my x and my y. All right, so let's start by plugging in numbers. So you can choose any number that you want. I like to start at 0 for my x. So to figure out the corresponding y value, notice that y is equal to x squared minus 1. So that means I'm putting that 0 in place of x, so we have 0 squared minus 1, which is equal to negative 1. Okay, so my first point is 0, comma, negative 1. Let's just do that in pink so it's easier to see. Next, I'm going to plug in a positive 1 for x. So y is going to equal 1 squared minus 1, which is 1 minus 1, or 0. So my point is 1, comma 0, and that will be here. I'm going to go ahead and plug in 2. So y will equal 2 squared minus 1. So that's 4 minus 1, or 3. So we have the point 2, comma 3. 2, and then we have to go up 3 units. I'm going to do one more in the positive direction. So let's say that x is 3. So y is going to be 3 squared minus 1. 3 squared is 9, minus 1 is going to be 8. So we have the point 3, comma 8. So 3, comma 8, let's see, 8 is going to be quite a ways up, because remember you need to make sure that your tick marks stay evenly spaced. So 3, comma 8 will be up here somewhere. Okay, well now let's see what's happening over on the negative x side, because we seem to have something that's going upward on the right. So I'm going to plug in a negative 1 for x. So since my equation says I'm squaring x, you need to make sure that you have your negative 1 in parentheses, because you're squaring that entire x value minus 1. Well, negative 1 squared is just a positive 1. Minus 1 gives us 0. So we have the point negative 1, comma 0, which means we don't go up or down. Okay, next, if I plug in negative 2, we'll have a negative 2 quantity squared minus 1. So that gives us a 4 minus 1, or a positive 3. So we have the point negative 2, comma, positive 3. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in a negative 3 for my x. So we have a negative 3 quantity squared minus 1 is equal to a positive 9 minus 1, or 8. So notice for all of these negative x values, for this equation we're coming up with the same y values as we did for the other side. So for this graph, it looks like we have kind of a U-shaped curve based on the points that we've plotted so far, and that is in fact what this equation is going to look like. So as we move on in the course, you're going to be able to graph something like this, or have an idea of what the graph looks like without having to plot points like we're doing right now. But as I mentioned, this is a way that you can always get an idea of what a graph looks like.